Hello everybody, my name is Ricardo Arencibia and this presentation is the results of an institutional project developed at the Complexity Science Center of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Complexity has become an attractive topic for scientometricians during the last 10 years. Nonlinearity, randomness, collective dynamics, and many other characteristics of complex phenomena have been under the focus of previous studies. The fact that science is a representative complex system is probably the reason why some researchers use complexity science tools for the purpose of mapping scientific fields, especially because through these maps we can understand how scientific fields evolve, we can recognize potentially insightful patterns from visually encoded science, and we can be able to capture the state of the art of any scientific field. However, the study of complexity sciences as an independent knowledge domain has not been studied by many authors. In 2014, Pollack, Alder, and Sankaran explored complexity theory research using geographical maps, co-authorship, and co-citation networks. They offer quite a bit of evidence of complexity theory applied to research in math and computer science, and some evidence of a growing application of complexity theory to management and organizational problems. 2 years later, Thomas and Zaitseva analyzed approximately 1,400 working papers developed by authors from the Santa Fe Institute, probably the most relevant institution in this field. They applied latent Dirichlet allocation techniques to describe the thematic evolution of complexity research during 26 years. They described complexity research as an intensely interdisciplinary field. The current work assumes the same institutional approach. Our objective was to characterize research developed by the Mexican Complexity Science Center, and we were really focused on how research on complex systems is. Is it necessarily collaborative? Is it really diverse? Is it essentially multidisciplinary? To answer these questions, we use Web of Science core collection and insights as data sources, covering 10 years of institutional research. We use the field author address to identify papers produced by the Mexican institution, as well as papers produced by other 11 International Complexity Science Center for comparative purposes. Self-organizing maps were constructed using the software BiblioSum developed by our team at the university. Co-occurrence networks were visualized using both Viewer and the Gephi. The institutional output was characterized using this set of bibliometric indicators provided by Insights, and we also use multidisciplinary measures based on Web of Science subject categories created by our team, which were also exposed during this ISSI conference. Here, these measures try to identify a core of subject categories that define the thematic orientation of papers produced by an institution and papers influenced by this institution. We assume that lower values represent a very specialized orientation and higher values indicate a wide multidisciplinary scope. Let's see some of the main results. During the studied period, the Mexican Complexity Science Center published 432 documents covered by Web of Science. Here we have a multidimensional map representing the analyzed years. The graph at the right side shows the evolution of 5 bibliometric indicators, and red tones express the higher values of each indicator. So there is a growing intensity of the scientific output, which is very strong at the end of the decade. The main efforts to publish articles in high visible journals were observed during the first half of the decade, a period also characterized by an intense activity of international collaboration, which implies that around 10% of articles were among the most cited papers and their scientific fields. At the end of the period, the institutional output was less dependent on the international collaboration and the journal selection for publication was diversified. However, the category normalized citation impact was above the world average during those years, and the highest values of normalized impact were observed in 2019, which were related to the higher percent of articles among the most cited publications. Probably the participation of the Mexican Complexity Science Center in the global burden of the CC International Project was decisive to achieve these results. Complexity was collaborative in a growing way. International, national, and interinstitutional collaboration increased. A half of the scientific output was developed with the participation of 98 countries from all continents. Institutions from the United States of America, United Kingdom, and Spain were leading, but you can see in the multidimensional profile how this international collaboration is overall published in high visible journals, showing a higher percent of papers among the most cited papers in their field, and showing also higher values of normalized impact, which is also evident in the post-viewer network. What about diversity of research? Well, the scientific output was published by 248 serials covered by 105 subject categories. You can see in this network, developed using Gephi, the intense relationship among them. This is possible due to the higher number of articles published in journals belonging to 2 or more subject categories. Is this diversity reflected by the staff composition? Of course it is. In this figure, you can see the staff composition and the multidisciplinary scope of research developed by them. Here, color of bubbles represent the field of their PhD, and the size of bubbles represent their whole career output. Researchers at the Mexican Complexity Science Center usually came from other faculties or institutes of the university, and they converge in institutional projects to develop interdisciplinary research. 70% of researchers has a thematic dispersion index higher than 5, and this indicator reflects not only the capacity they have to do research in at least 5 or more disciplines, but also the repercussion of their research in authors from multiple disciplines that usually cite their papers. This multidisciplinary scope is similar to those observed in the sample of 11 complexity science centers selected for the current study. However, if we analyze the subject category score in articles and cited articles, researchers at the Mexican Complexity Science Centers published 80% of articles in 29 subject categories, receiving 80% of citations from 37 subject categories. This implies a thematic dispersion index higher than 30. The multidisciplinary scope of the Mexican institution was much higher than the rest. On the other hand, the keyword concurrence analysis confirmed its research multidisciplinarity as a significant characteristic, which is expressed by the 7 main research fronts. The interdisciplinary nature of these research fronts, with thoughtfully oriented challenges and goals, have been a characteristic of the Mexican Institute, which requires a holistic vision and a quite ambitious strategy. Surprisingly, this institutional strategy was supported mainly by national funding, a half provided by the own National Autonomous University of Mexico, and only a 30% was funded by international agencies. This is a quite interesting characteristic of the Mexican Center that probably implies that institutional agreements, projects, and engagements put the focus not only in mainstream science, but also in solving problems inherent to a country like Mexico, with serious health and mobility problems given its high population density, a country with a huge social gap that generates the risk of internal crisis, a country with a rich ecosystem full of protected species and important natural resources, and a constant exposure to emergencies caused by hurricanes, earthquakes, and volcanoes. Are all of the observed characteristics shared by institutes specialized on complex systems? Well, that is the incoming focus of our research. At this moment, we can conclude that during the period analyzed, the studied institution exhibited a growing output with an expansive influence of the international scientific community and an intense international and national collaboration activity. National funds for research were predominant, and the multidisciplinary nature of research was evidenced by the staff composition, the diversity of topics addressed, as well as the variety of fields influenced by the published research. Since its foundation, the Mexican Complexity Center has promoted and integrated multidisciplinary academic groups to collaborate on large projects and face national challenges from the perspective of complex thinking. And this was confirmed by our study. We were surprised by the highest thematic dispersion index of the Mexican Center, respecting the other 11 institutions included in the study, and we are right now studying this aspect using diversity measures in order to have a better comprehension of the interdisciplinary research developed by this multidisciplinary staff. So, we want to thank the Academic Coordination Department of the National Autonomous University of Mexico for the support of our project, and thank you very much to all organizers and participants of this ISSI conference. You can contact with us through the following email.